Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to take a look at week 4 of the Overwatch League and look at how I did with my picks and my fun predictions and all that kind of stuff. So let's take a look now at my picks from the week. As you can see, I went 4-3 overall, but I also went off with my big pick. Did not get that one correct. So I'm 2-3 on the season for my big pick games, and I am 16-9 for my overall record. And you know what? I'm not that surprised about that. There's a lot of things that happened this week that surprised me, but we're going to talk about some of that right now. Saturday was a pretty straightforward day. Every match went as expected. The NYXL had their dominant win over the Florida Mayhem. The Atlanta Reign had a dominant win over the Toronto Defiant. The London Spitfire did not have a dominant win over the Houston Outlaws, but they did manage to pull away the win at the end in a 3-2 match. That was back and forth up until that point. Actually, no. Houston almost had a reverse sweep if they won that final map. So, not a ton of stuff that I'm going to take away from Saturday. Atlanta Reign looked really good going up against Toronto, and that's about what I expected. New York looked very good against the Mayhem. They didn't play Sabiolbi or Who Are You? They were playing Nene Libero, which I think is interesting. If I'm New York, I think that what you have to do going forward is you have to kind of do these different trials with your different DPS players, especially now that we know there's going to be hero pools next season or next week. We know who it's going to be, but I'll talk about that in a little bit later. I think that you have some of these teams who are going to have to try to play different things. And I think at the end of the day, we're going to see a lot of people playing like really just talented heroes and players. So like, you know, if you're looking at it and saying like our best bet is to run Doomfist Sombra Dive, well then you're going to be seeing probably like Sabiolbi and Libero. Unless Who Are You as a good Doomfist. I don't know if he does. Because those are the two players who play those heroes at the best level. And that's what I'd expect from them. So it's interesting. But New York, I think, needs to run like different combinations of their DPS players. So, you know, they've been running Sabiolbi Who Are You, and then they've been running Nene Libero. So maybe see what happens if you run Nene Who Are You or Sabiolbi Libero, and see how those kind of work out to try to find that best combination of DPS heroes you have. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm curious to see what happens with them. The Atlanta Reign looked really, really good on Saturday. Not so much on Sunday. They looked really good on Saturday. They were pretty dominant, but they also did some weird things. They were running double main tank, which most people had stopped running by now. Though we have seen teams have some success with it. The Paris Eternal won a game over the London Spitfire back in week 1 using double main tank, so it's not unheard of. It's just a little strange overall. The interesting stuff with that match was the heroes that they were playing on the damage dealing side. Baby Bay played a lot of Torbjorn. It was just a very weird match, but that's the Atlanta Reign for you. They do kind of weird things, and it worked. So what are you gonna do about it? And then with the Spitfire vs Outlaws match, I didn't really see much of that match. So, but I mean, it was a pretty simple match. It was what it was. That's all there is to it. Sunday is when the juicy stuff happened, because Sunday was interesting. Now I completely forgot about the Fusion vs Uprising match, honestly, because it was just so quick and easy. The Fusion just steamrolled the Uprising. It wasn't even a challenge for them. The Uprising were not that good, to be completely honest with you. And the Uprising got completely obliterated by the Fusion. It was a pretty one-sided affair. The Paris Eternal versus the Atlanta Reign was a very, very, very good series. A very close series. It was 3-1 in Paris's favor, but it really wasn't that one-sided. Paris Eternal looked like the better team the whole time. But it was something where, you know, the Atlanta Reign did manage to take a map. They had some good holds on defense and all that kind of stuff, but ultimately the Paris Eternal pulled away the win. And I think that really just is a lot of the Paris Eternal. I think a lot of us were kind of sleeping on the Paris Eternal. A lot of us didn't realize how good they were. A lot of us were under the impression like, oh, when they get Sparkle back, they'll be really good. Like, that's what they need. But I think we look at the team itself and kind of what the complaints that some people had, at least even a complaint that I had. You know, I looked at the team and I said, well, one of the biggest problems with the team is that their tank, right? Their main tank. They don't have a great main tank. Well, Ben Betts has been playing really, really well, and that was something that I was wrong about. I looked at the support line and I thought, it's not going to be that much better than it was last year. FD God is significantly better than I thought he was, and he's doing a really good job at doing that Reddit Lucio stuff at a high level. And so that's somewhere that I was wrong. And then, of course, we knew XC was going to be good. We knew Hanbin was going to be good. Nico's been playing very, very well. So this is a team that actually is very, very good. And they're doing things in a way that I just didn't expect out of the Paris Eternal. And I think they're going to be one of the best teams going forward. I'm curious to see them matching up against some of these Pacific teams who we haven't really seen a lot of yet, to see how they would perform against them. One of the matches I'm really looking forward to coming up next week, so a little preview, is the Paris Eternal taking on the Philadelphia Fusion, because I think that will really be a sign of where these teams are and who is really the best team in the league. Because I think one of the things with Paris is they haven't won big, right? New York's, 4-1 plus 9. Fusion's 5-0 plus 11. Paris is 3-1 plus 5. So it's a good differential. Like, it's not bad, but they've played 4 games. They've only lost 1, and they're plus 5 in differential. So it's a little interesting from them in that department, but they've also played some decently good teams. So I'm just curious to see what the Eternal do. I like what they've done, and I want to see what they do when they go up against a team that we consider one of the best teams in the league. Even though we also considered the Reign one of the best teams in the league, so it's interesting. The Spitfire Mayhem series was amazing. It was really kind of scrappy and not great Overwatch, but the Spitfire did end up walking away with the win. Glister is really good. I mean, that's my biggest takeaway. Glister's really, really good. This is a match that I felt like it was a 50-50. It would go pretty much either way. And the series went to 5 maps. So what would I expect, That's about what I would expect from a series that goes to 5 maps, or a series that I consider to be a 50-50 to go that way. I didn't take a lot away from that match. What I took away is capable of getting wins. But my problem with London is, when you look at who they've played and who they've beaten, they're 3-2, but their wins have come against the Mayhem, the Outlaws, and the Justice, right? So what that tells me about the Spitfire is they're a pretty mediocre team. They're a pretty low mid-table team, and I don't expect them to have a lot of success when they're playing against some other teams that are higher on the table, right? Because when we look at their losses, right, their losses are to New York and to Philadelphia, both of which were very one-sided in the favor of the team that they lost to. Or Spitfire, no. Spitfire, I apologize. I'm thinking the Mayhem. Spitfire lost to New York and to Philadelphia. The game against New York, not super one-sided. The game against Philadelphia, very one-sided. So the Spitfire have an interesting team. I don't really think they're that great. I mean, they're 3-2 minus 2. They have a positive record and a negative differential. So I don't have a ton of confidence in the Spitfire. I think they're a very, very, very mediocre team who are just kind of winning these games against more mediocre teams. So that's really what we're going to have to see what they do going forward. But I don't have a ton of faith in them as a really strong team. I mean, right now in the standings, they're ahead of the Reign. They're ahead of the Defiant. I wouldn't necessarily say the Spitfire are better than those teams. The Defiant, of course, disappointed in losing to the Houston Outlaws on Sunday, so they gave Houston their first win of the season. They went 1-5, which is still not great. So, you may say, well, how can you put the Defiant ahead of the Spitfire if the Spitfire beat the Outlaws and the Outlaws beat the Defiant? I actually thought the Outlaws played very well on Sunday. I thought they played to their strengths more than what they had been in the past. They were playing a lot of Summer Doomfist on some of the maps, and I thought that they had Linkser and Hydration playing very, very well together. I think the Outlaws are a good team. I think they have the talent to be a good team. The problem is we weren't seeing them at full strength. Obviously, we heard about them being sick. There was a period where they didn't have hydration and all this other kind of stuff that kind of worked together to kind of create, I think, a problem for this team. To create basically an air where they just couldn't succeed to the level that I believe they wanted to succeed, mainly because they just didn't have what they needed to do it, right? They didn't have the full strength of their team. But I look at this team now, and I think what they showed is that they have the ability to win games. They can beat teams, obviously. They're not a team who's just going to lose every game they play this season, which I didn't think they would be. But they are a team that has to get some work done to really be able to compete with some of these teams at the top. They're not a team who's going to beat teams that are really, really good. They're not going to be able to compete against the Fusion, against the Excelsior, against the Titans, against the Shock. Probably not even against the Eternal. Against the Dragons, most likely, right? We haven't seen every team play, so we don't know exactly where all these teams are. But they're not a team that's going to be punching up. They're going to be a team that's going to have to beat the teams that are around them and start to improve and improve and improve if they want to get to a point where they're really, really good. But I think they played very well this weekend. They almost won against London. They won against Toronto. Toronto, I think, did not play well this weekend, which is interesting. I think that Toronto are better than what we've been seeing from them in the most recent weeks. I just think that they are getting... I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we are just wrong about the Defiant. Maybe they are just not that good. A lot of people had kind of put the Defiant pretty low. But the Defiant are a team who was able to compete with the Fusion, and then they struggled against the Rain, and they struggled against the Outlaws. So I feel very mixed about the Defiant. It's hard for me to look at the Defiant and try to figure out what's going on, because did the Fusion play poorly against the Defiant, or did the Defiant play really, really well, and then did they play poorly against, say, the Rain and the Outlaws? It's hard to tell right now, but that's really where I'm at for that. Real quick, let's talk about this hero pool stuff. As you saw, many of you, I'm sure, the hero pool was picked, and the banned heroes are Reinhardt, Moira, McCree, and Widowmaker. Next week is the Washington Justice homestand. I don't know every team that's playing. I know the Washington Justice are playing. I know the Fusion are playing against Paris. I know New York plays. They play against Washington. They only have one match that week. I think Boston plays next week. So I don't know for sure who everyone is that's playing. But it's an interesting pool because it's going to be a pool without hit scan. There's no McCree, but there's still May. But the fact that there's no McCree means that there could be tracers that play more, because you don't have tracers being blocked by the McCree. They don't have to worry about the McCree. They still have to worry about the Brig, of course, but they don't have to worry about McCree. There's no Widowmaker, so hit scan is pretty much gone. The only hit scan here that is there, well, I guess Soldier 76 is also there, but Ashe is the main one that's there, and Ashe is not someone who gets a lot of playtime because she's not that great of a hero, unfortunately. So I'd expect a lot of probably Doomfist Somber comps. I wouldn't be surprised if we got a lot of Sim comps. It just depends really on what we see. With no Reinhardt, the chances of us seeing May are a bit lower. I just hope we don't see May that much anyway. I would be happy if May was gone, but that is what it is. It's an interesting hero pool, so we'll see how it impacts the week going forward. Finally, let's take a look at the Atlantic Conference standings, which I keep saying we're going to do, and I don't do because it's just way too much with confusing things, with teams not playing all the time. I just waited till every team has played, but we have all the teams having played now, and here are the standings. So, Fusion, New York, Paris are really the top three. The Atlanta Reign, depending on what they do going forward, may be able to kind of be considered like the top 4 in the Atlantic. But really, right now, it's like the top 3 and then everybody else. The Paris Eternal are playing very, very well, I think. I think they're going to be a team who's going to be able to compete with the Excelsior and with the Fusion. We'll see where they are at, really, this weekend when they play the Fusion. But for now, we just have to wait and see until then. But it's an interesting look at the standings. The Defiant went from pretty up there to pretty down there. So I'm intrigued by what we have going on here. So I'm curious to see what happens. But you have a team like the Justice, who really should benefit from not having to travel very much, and they are kind of struggling. So we're gonna see how it goes. But I think it's an interesting standings right now. The Excelsior not being at the top of an Atlantic standings is a bit weird. They're usually at the top. But we'll see how they fare going forward. Obviously, the Fusion are still a team that are playing really well, but the Eternal, I think, are going to be competing for that win next week. So I'm excited to see that. But that is everything that I have for you today. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing. Let me know your thoughts on this weekend, or this past weekend of matches down below. But I am going to get out of here, so thank you once again. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.